it's time to hear from our second plenary speaker, Dick Brecht. There he is. Okay, good. You're in the room. Okay, so I'm going to introduce him. So Richard Dick Brecht is University of Maryland Professor Emeritus and serves as Director of the American Council's Research Center. He has collaborated with us, with the coalition, for many years, since we were formed. Before that, he collaborated with us with the Alliance for the Advancement of Heritage Languages. He's actually the one who got us and all of this started in the 1990s. We worked together to hold 2 conferences for heritage language educators. I don't know if you remember, but those are the years in the 1990s when we started using the term heritage language. And recognizing that there were actually heritage language speakers in our schools and in our programs. So we held 2 conferences. And after the second one, Dick said, we need to do more than just hold conferences. So we got together and formed the Alliance for the Advancement of Heritage Languages. And then later, when we realized that we were talking about heritage languages, but nobody was talking about community-based heritage language schools. And people started coming up to me and saying, you know, you're mostly focusing on universities, and you're not talking about us at all. And so a group of us got together, and the coalition board, which are the co-founders, formed the coalition. So Dick, we thank you for your ongoing collaboration and leadership. I'm not sure we would be here without you and without your vision. He's also co-founder and chief language officer of Genie, which is an augmented interpretation company focused on immigrant and foreign-born communities, their locations and their languages, and they win all kinds of awards. What, you want me to shut up? No. I'm not. He's built and led many organizations, including American Councils for International Education, the Center for Advanced Study of Language, which is now the Applied Research Lab for Intelligence and Security. I'm almost done there. The National Council of Less Commonly Taught Languages and the National Foreign Language Center. And that's where he was when I met him. He serves on multiple boards, including the National Heritage Language Resource Center at UCLA, which is one of our sponsors. And I could say a lot more about him and his activities, but you can read about them in the conference program, and I don't want to take any more time from him. Thank you, Dick.
I had a dream last night, true story. Woke up in the middle of the night, and this dream was, I was at a conference, and the moderator, before I started speaking, said to me, after I spoke, said, how many of you have heard this speech before? Everyone in the room raised their hand. I swear to God, that's a dream I had. And the reason why is because yesterday you set that up. Your conversation that you talked about or everything that I only wish I could say today, but you're going to hear it again and again, but this is going to be good wine in perhaps a new bottle. I'm going to stay here so I can see my slide. Oh, I'll start on you to be sure. I'd like, of course, thank you, Danielle, for doing all of this. Enjoy, she's lying. He's done it all, and all some people like us do to support her. She has been amazing, giving her life to this for so many decades. Okay, and that's the real truth of it. Why am I here? Well, this is why I'm here. This organization, this community has to stop, not sit back. It has to drive the immigrants' integration, and it has to drive K-16 in a real way. These are hard wheels to turn. But that's what my premise is when I start this and I'll try to build the case for that, okay? Now, the rationale for why we're here, and what we're doing is easy. These are real simple statements, right? Obviously, the simple statement says, this is who we are. This is why we are a nation of immigrants. Everyone here, unless there is a Native American, is a product of an immigrant. Okay, and our country is a long ways away from recognizing that, but that's our job. Okay, and this community, these schools, over 100 years, have made this happen, have demonstrated the way to integrate newcomers into the society with themselves and with the society. And I'm going to argue for that. But the last point is, we can do more. You don't want to hear about it because you're ready to do more. You can do, well, forget about it. You're going to have to do more. And I say, you are going to have to do more. We're all going to have to do more. Okay? I want to do a brief history. Joy has started this, but I think we ought to remember this. In the 1980s, all of a sudden, the country discovered less commonly taught languages. I don't like under-resourced languages, the right way to say that, not less commonly taught, by the way. And they discovered that. And in the National Foreign Language Center, we helped found the national organization, the National Council of Organizations for Less Commonly Taught Languages, all African Language Teachers Association, South Asian language teachers, all these small language organizations. They started popping up. This is in the 80s. And I'm very proud to say at the National Foreign Language Center, we started using the term the language enterprise. These are all the providers and the consumers of language in the United States. They are academia, business, government, indigenous, heritage, and NGOs. All of us are part of the language enterprise, part of us providing, part consuming. And this notion, and you'll notice, that's where heritage, that's part of the establishment of the basis of heritage languages. It's not the whole thing, but it's part of it. And in the 90s, in the 2000s, as this is very important, standing on the shoulders of real giants like Joshua Fishman and Webber Levens and Russ Campbell and people you know, and standing on the shoulders, I'm sorry, I didn't give you the right version of the slide, there was one sentence missing, it's my fault. Standing on the shoulders of the Australian Community Languages Organization. Okay, Professor Klein and Joe Luganko and our colleague sitting over there. And then we had our conference, we had our first language conference, we had another conference, and we had, we took a trip to Australia, and that's where it is. We try to reinforce that operation. They call them community languages, we call them heritage languages, now we call them heritage community languages, which is the right way to go. And then we had our second thing. The results of that period in the 90s and 2000s, the Alliance for Advancement of Heritage Languages, the Heritage Languages Initiative Advisory Board, Online Heritage Language Research Journal, the National Heritage Language Resource Center at UCLA, and the Coalition. This happened at that period in the 90s and early 2000s. In the 2010s and 2020s, we decided, and here you go, it's not foreign languages, it's not indigenous languages, it's not heritage language, it's America's language. Every one of those are America's languages. They're not foreign, they're not commonly taught, they're not less commonly taught, they're not heritage, they're not indigenous, they're all America's languages. And the sooner we understand that, and the sooner everybody gets that, the sooner we'll understand we're a multilingual country. We've always been a multilingual. The first time it was multilingual with about 400 indigenous languages. Okay? Unfortunately, we did not treat them very well, say the least. But we are all, this is who we are. Okay? And we kind of took this and tried to can it as America's languages. We had an initiative supported by Right. Haven't seen them. Don't tell my funder, but they gave us a lot of money, and it's called America's Language, just because of all of those languages. And what we try to do, and now Danielle is helping us try to go forward with it, is create a database of language programs across all of these, indigenous, heritage, K-12, and so on. Database of programs that are actually bringing, instead of talking about race and heritage and indigenous and ethnicities in the classroom, trying to bring race and ethnicities into the classroom. And that's what that initiative is about. But it's all wrapped around America's language. Thank you, Melody. Tell me. Oh, I'm gonna tell you remembered and get all the money. These are, by the way, these are American languages, and these are the people that we're trying to serve. These are the learners we're trying to serve. And look at that. American Indian, Native Latin, Native Alaska Native, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Island, heritage, second generation or more, recent immigrants, refugee, Latino, Latinos, English language learners, deaf signers. They're all the people we owe language to in this country. And not only the emerging bilinguals, but also the neglected monolinguals. These are people in rural areas or some who have never had a chance except to take Spanish 1 because their districts have eliminated everything else. The people of color, disadvantaged rural, urban, and even adult women. These are all, this is the picture I'm trying to draw. These are all America's languages. These are all America's languages learners. And notice what's there. The heritage and the immigrant and the refugees, this is who we are. Okay, finally, the current status, you know this, look at all those, like 900 schools, and I'm part of those numbers are probably a little old, and my point is, I want to make here, the coverage we have in the programs are really good. Look where the coverage is. It's Europe, East Asia, South Asia. I'm asking us, where's Africa? Where's Latin America? Where's Southeast Asia? These are opportunities still waiting for us. And notice that Joy and her leadership, we know that these are the community-based heritage language schools. These are their goals, and look at the last one that was added. The microphones were not on, will stay close, so everyone online can hear. By the way, I forgot to welcome all of you online. Sometimes we get so taken up with looking at each other in the room that we neglect you, and I apologize for doing that. You are most welcome. Okay, why not? This is my colleague, Dick Lambert, always said, it's always the Passover question. What's so different about this day? And what's different about this day is the immigration fears in this country with the immigration explosion, which has happened. And most importantly, or equally importantly, is what they're doing is creating super diverse communities all around the world. We've never had, with all the migrations, we've never had more different languages coming together in our communities around the world. There's a great book, which is called Language City. If you haven't looked at it, about New York City, 400 languages. This man has documented every language in every community by the block in New York City, by the intersection of those blocks in New York City, which languages, dead languages, or dying languages. So it's amazing. It's an example of what a super diverse city is, the most diverse country, city in the world, but all over the United States and all over the world, we're creating these. And what that's raising is, why is formal education not integrated? And why on earth do we have to stand here and still have all the immigrants coming in? And you'll see all through this, I believe our job is tied to social justice in the United States. Giving access to everyone in his or her language is a social justice issue because the language obstacle in healthcare, which is my business, and legal is outrageous. It's absolutely an incredible injustice in this country of the people. And if you work with, we work with Mass General Hospital, and they will tell you, you know, we have 10% of the people who come in, who get served in language, and the rest do not. And so all of this is, now I've set the whole agenda. Unfortunately, I have a large agenda. And I'll just, you know about immigration in the United States. Ken knows this probably better than anybody, but we have, it's really kind of interesting. We have more foreign-born in this country than Germany, Saudi Arabia, Russia, and UK, which are the next highest combined. If you look at it, our population is 5% of the world and 20% of foreign-born of the world. Okay, in this country. It is absolutely staggering what we've always been the country, the destination of choice. Australia and the United States, all this open country. And they sent us the bad guys and they sent us the good, and the good guys came too. And look what we have, the most wonderful country with Australia in the world. Time to put those people to bed. This is only an example of the number. You can see, I don't have to tell you about it, but let's not forget who we are. And you know better than anyone, but they just don't, because this is all advertised. The argument is, if you look at the immigration happening, it's not a problem. It's an opportunity. Okay, and that's what that means. Is what we can do, we now know where all the foreign-born are. These references down below. If you want to find out where foreign-born in the United States are, you want to know what languages, you want to know where they live, you want to know the trend over the last 30 years, and all of those data are now available. We have a large data. I've created a spreadsheet on that. But we now can tell you where they are. And so I went to chat GPT and I said, give me all the immigrant communities. I stopped at 250 because that's chat. GPT will go on forever. Of course, they lie like that. But this is not lie in the sense that this is a remarkable statement. And look at it. There are different kinds of things. This is chat GPT. Not too serious. I just stopped at 17 and picked up at 241 to give you an idea what they think of the big ones, what they think of still the other ones, and so on. It's a remarkable statement about this country, and one that you all know, but my job is to, that's what I said, this is a reprise of what you know. My job is to remind us to keep everything we know fresh and use it in every way we can. And if you want to deal with, and I'll talk about collaboration with organizations, these are just some of the immigrant organizations. There are plenty of people to work with in this country in the immigrant sphere. Okay, it's not like we're alone. And of course, a lot of them are trying to just help the immigrants get settled. But what other better way that we haven't cracked those people with this approach? You want to make them comfortable? Take care of their children. Okay, and they don't know this yet. But there's the opportunity. What are our advantages? Our advantages are pretty clear. That is, the advantages we gain. We get more with working with immigrants, working with the immigrant community. I'm coming to the education system soon. We get more learners, obviously, if we work with them. We get more programs, and these programs will not only be in the languages we have, but they'll be in the languages we don't have. And let me make a point about the languages we don't have. I mentioned Africa, South Asia, and Latin America. That doesn't mean we neglect the languages of Europe. I wanted to make that clear because one of you said, don't forget, that's where we started, and that's very strong for us. It's not a matter of choosing one or the other. It's a matter of expansion, not a matter of replacement, okay? And so, a larger coalition. And what I like is this mingling. We have to start this outreach and mingling our communities, the new ones with the old ones. Okay, we've always done that on some level. Now we have to do this more rigorously. And there are other advantages like, for instance, the growth of related languages. Some of you have talked about not only my main language, but maybe the related language, like Ukrainian and Russian and so on, if we can't do it together and so on. And those related languages, if we deal with these immigrants and the number of immigrants and the number of communities, these very tiny communities, they might not have their own ability to establish, but they can lean on us. And we can help them bring in these other, because if you know Polish, okay, that's wonderful, but you might, you might want to look at Ukrainian too. We can bring them, we can talk and we can build communities this way. And also, close to my heart is when we deal with the heritage community, immigrant communities, we have to start looking at non-literate language. When you go to Latin America, in our company, Gene, we talk all that we deal very much with Ma languages, Mayan languages, Machi, and so on. These are not written down. So there's no large language model, which is based on text, that is going to handle these. These are real people who don't have a written language, and they come to this country and they need a community. The only way they can express themselves, they need this community, okay? And not to mention the potential funding, OELA, you saw in their wonderful new program on, they just announced it, English language learners and heritage communities, right? And you can see the federal government is starting to creep into this, starting to get it, and OELA is a great ally. And I'm hoping that once they decide that, yes, it'll be about ELs, but you want to strengthen that ELs. We know if you have another language, and we need to be bilingual. We don't need to transfer. We in this country and in most English-speaking countries have always assumed when an immigrant comes in, it's on them to learn English, not on us to learn their languages. And so, but it's also now on us to let them keep their languages. Yes, learn English. And that's where OELA, of course, that's the government stand. Let them all learn English. But we have to introduce something else there. I'm hoping we can reach into that segment. What are the advantages of working with formal education? Now we start. And this is, again, you heard this all yesterday, again. We're not competing with them, but we know that our communities would love credit transfer. All right, we need to be recognized, and the advantages for us is they have teacher recruitment and teacher training that we need to share with them. We need to get that from them. They have the advantages and they have the materials and so on. I'm digressing. They have access. What we have, and most importantly, and we talk about this, what we'll get from them, particularly the dual language immersion and the global seals and the bridge program, which is the higher education these are things that the formal education system owes us. They owe us access to that because as we started, this is the language enterprise. We're part of the language enterprise. We have one language community. It's America's languages community. And this is what they owe us. All of this, they owe us, but they're not gonna offer it. We're gonna have to take it. And that's gonna require gentle persuasion. Like behind their back with their arm. The formal education, what do they get from us? That's pretty simple. Formal education in the United States is dying. It's in an existential crisis right at the moment. Right at the moment, language education and higher education, we've lost a major portion of enrollments in higher education. K-12 enrollments in the United States are exactly the same as they were in 1970. Now, our population has increased. So our enrollments are going down. Programs are disappearing. I'm a Russian linguist. Russian language programs are being thrown out all over the place. Okay, and programs, we're losing programs. And this way, if they saw what we offer, and we are an ally to them, and frankly, going to funders in education for K-12 and K-16 in the United States, I won't say it's a waste of time, it's an argument to try to maintain funding. In these administrations, we're just trying to maintain. We keep trying to add, but they subtract, and we split the difference and try to maintain. That's where we are in funding. And okay. The idea that we can help schools and parents integrate, we can help them talk to parents, because frankly, we can talk to parents better than they can, because we have parents in our classrooms teaching and so on. And so this is a vital asset that we have and they need. And frankly, the way education will stop its slide in enrollments. Right now, we have a lot of emphasis in language education, formal language education, and getting learners in our classrooms to understand race. That's great. Not as good as getting races and ethnicity into our classrooms. If you want to get race into our classrooms and talk about that, getting white learners to understand our diversity, it's a good idea to have varied materials and so on. It's a lot better to have different ethnicities and races sitting beside those learners and let them work out. Give them agency and let them work out understanding between races. And that's what they need from us. And that's what advances DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's not talking about and working on a curriculum, right? Let's work on recruiting people outside in formal language education. We know that the vast majority, probably 95%, are from privileged communities and our privileged populations. We have never reached out beyond, and that has not changed. And if we're going to stop the slide of enrollments, it's going to be, we're going to take aggressive action in our minds and in our actions to recruit into our classrooms people like your students, people from the Black community and people of color and so on. But this is why we have such an advantage and can offer so much to higher education. I won't even talk about higher education's inability to produce high enough language skills that businesses and government wants. We still are graduating basically intermediate high majors in higher education. That's not good enough. If they build on our students, we'll graduate with advanced and maybe distinguished before they're done. And that's what the flagship program is trying to do and so on. But there, again, We're trying to do remarkable things with programs like this. In the meanwhile, neglecting all this fertile ground. You want to know why learners don't take language in the United States? They don't think it's necessary because English is good enough. And besides, Google Translate will handle the rest of it. So if you tied English and technology, why on earth would they study language? You talked about it before, they'll study language because their friends are in language classes. And you want to know something? Heritage learners will go into language classes if given a chance, given credit for what they know, given it a curriculum that is not based on Derrida's and passé composé definition, but actual language usage and so on, okay? That's what we can give them. We'll get from them a lot, but they'll get so much more from us. And I say us and them, that's because I'm an American and everything else is, everything is us and them. I don't want to talk about politics. Here are some of the questions that I put in front of you. Okay, and some of them are pretty naive now after our wonderful conversation, but you think about it. Do we see these immigrant streams as a possibility? Talking to the Bulgarian organization, yes, they're already working. The Ukrainian organization, they're working. Some of you are working at it. But the question is, do we all see that out there, when I showed you those numbers, I showed you all those communities, what an opportunity for us. Do we understand that opportunity? Are we actually engaging now? How many of us are trying, and how are we going to engage? Because working with immigrant communities is very, very difficult. They're consumed, the parents are consumed with their kids learning English, and they're learning English, right? But there is a way, if they see that you can have English and your culture, and as my Chinese friends said, my children always stop the Chinese heritage school as soon as they're tall as a mother. And I said, well, why do you want them in there? I want them in there because I want them to respect me as their parent, not the way Americans disrespect their parents. I thought that was the most eloquent articulation of a mom's interest in having those kids in that school, right? And after 12 years old, it's hopeless. They're gone. They're gone. They'll send their children back if they get that message. It is the culture, it is the language, it is that love, the culture, that desperation to hold that identity. Yeah. Those are questions, I think, how can we assist, for instance, in this fourth point, how can we assist them in building their school? They don't have to, we don't have to do it for them, but we can show them what teachers are. We can show them a lot of what materials we use. And are we ready to reach out? Okay, and if we do, miracles will happen. It's not only questions for us, it's for them. Are they willing? Do they have the same interest as you have? How long did it take us to get devoted to this? How long? It's not automatic. When you just come here, it's survival, right? And to think about the long term, to think about the next generation, is a very hard thing. I don't know the answer to that question because we've never worked with immigrant populations and organizations enough to get, and they don't understand that question, frankly. How do they know? And are newly arrived immigrants aware of us? I don't know that. I don't know that. We don't know. We don't have any information that I know. And if any of you know anything about this, let me know. I don't know anyone who has this information about our relationships and immigration relationships to us and what they care about and whether they would invest in this. Of course they would if they had the opportunity, if they knew about us, and if they knew about what it got us. We don't know enough about what we get from it, what our children get. That's another research point we need. We don't know enough what we give our children. We can talk about, we have anecdotes, but we don't have the data. And as I mentioned yesterday, if you want money, opinions don't work. The only thing that works is data, accumulating data and showing bad things happen or good things happen. But either way, it's got to be based on what the data is, not what we think it is. And finally, are we clear examples? And there are clear examples in this room now about this collaboration, and I hope we can hear some of you tell us about it. And finally, for the formal education system, my favorite group of people, do they realize that all language education systems, wherever they are, formal or informal, they are part of America's languages. And it's not by accreditation that you recognize a language system. It's by community served. And right now, and that's what we're talking about, do they see this? Do they include the heritage community? Do they include the indigenous communities with their schools and so on? The answer is, they'll say yes, but they don't do anything about it. Okay, and it's not. Let me step down from that. It's not that they don't do anything about it. They're trying, but we need to work with them. We need to be much more aggressive. My whole message is on us, not them. Here's the planning agenda that I proposed, and I'm finishing. The planning agenda is we need to pursue discussions. I don't know what the venue is. This is not my job. My job is not to be practical. My job is not to give you an easy way. My job is to suggest things you ought to do. Now, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. I don't know what else to do because there are two ways to approach problems. There are two ways to approach the problem. One is bottom up. One is top down. You're working the bottom up, which is the effective way to do it. It's human to human. The top down policymakers and funders and so on can go on ranting and raving. But if they're not standing on the bottom up shoulders, they're just ranting and raving. Okay? And that's the point here. We need first to get these communications established with the immigrant community. We need to talk again more to the education system, and our AATs are in it. They want it. AAT, American Teachers Association, know we're desperate about our enrollments. They all know that. They want to find ways to work. And ACTFL is always there, ready to help, always leading. MLA is very interested in the social justice issues and so on. And so these are our partners. And in U.S. government, of course, USCD, that's OLO, which is Title III, Title VI. All these programs are slated for formal education. We have to elbow in. It's starting. It's starting. We have to elbow in more aggressively. And I really feel very strongly about dual language immersion and the seals of biliteracy and those programs. We are very strongly dual language immersion. The half of the kids are heritage community children. They're a very strong asset because that's what they rely on more than anything else. They have English learners in there, and those are from the immigrant communities and working with our foreign language learners. Some of them are heritage on both sides. It's a great opportunity to watch happening, what's happening in classrooms now, which I think is the most innovative thing happening in language education in the United States. And the seals of biliteracy go without saying, if we can give them full recognition of what they have, obviously. The other, what about the bottom up again? How many of you worked with the Parent Teachers Association? I know it. I told you, I couldn't come back and just tell you what you know. Here's this, besides this policy from top down, which we get people like me talking about this all the time, who cares? What we need is this, what is called in Black feminist, research, emergent strategy. The emergent strategy is to start from the bottom. First off, the emergent strategy, you start in yourself and you make up your mind that you're gonna do something and you know what to do. Then you reach out to the person next, and then you reach out to the person next, and so on. That's what emergent strategy is, the notion that it's based on nature. It's based on the fact that mushrooms talk to one another and then grow into mushroom field. Trees talk to one another and grow into trees. And the whole notion, which is a wonderful, it's a great literature, by the way. It's Black feminist queer literature. It's really good stuff if you want to learn how you build communities. I give you quotations of who's doing that, but anyhow. Finally, the implementation strategy, as I just said, it's got to be a little bit of top down, but a lot of bottom up. I'm finishing. The framework is basically working with heritage and formal education. That's the idea. It's the three of us with us. It's broadening, they're broadening the focus and getting people into our classrooms, not just talking about it in our classrooms. Okay, we need partnerships, okay, with immigrant communities, local school districts, national organizations, relevant programs. We need partnership. We need more discussion. So the framework lays out the partnerships, and that framework is not too hard to describe. It's easy to describe. Hard as hell, but that's not my zone. And so on. The funding then will come if we show we have a framework, we have partnerships, we have alliances, we have people behind us. And when they go to lobby on the Hill, as they're doing now, they're just not talking about formal education, they're talking about heritage now. They're talking about, and when you talk about heritage, you have to talk about the immigration flow. That's the tie, okay, that's the triumph. And by the way, the private foundations aren't interested in language. They don't. I've been all over the private foundation. They don't care about language. They just don't care. If you talk about social justice, they will care. And that's why you see me trying to weave social justice into this, because this is ultimately, if we work within the immigrant communities and so, this is a social justice issue. It's not a language issue. And if you want to change the way, if you want to start a movement, there's a great example about movement, about good food. It's a corporation called Happy Family wanted to start spreading the idea that you need really good food for your children. So they brought their parents in. And they said, what do you care most about the future, my children? What do you care most? I want them to be safe and healthy. Let's talk about healthy. And then they started talking about what food is part of it. And so it was, you start with the parents, but you don't go crushing with them. I want to sell you food. I want to sell you language. You start asking, what do they care about? And they'll tell you immediately. They care about the future of their children. And then how is that affected? And then you look at the advantages of bilingualism, and we know there's self-efficacy, their cognitive advantages, their educational advantages, and their employment advantages. And the cognitive advantages are incredible because they make education an advantage and so on. And so if you start this strategy, you're not selling language anymore. You're selling the well-being of these children in the future. And the well-being of these children is incredibly enhanced at the cheapest price possible with bilingualism or biculturalism and so on. And that's the sell. It's not selling about language or about, I am done. The benefits to us are clear. More numbers, immigrants, more integration, language education, more enrollments. Is the time really different now? Probably not. We've always dealt with lack of diversity. Always, and we're dealing with it now. We're always denied immigrants their rights and so on. So again, coming back to this, it's a matter of us being understanding that all the great work we have done is not enough. Joy, you've just begun. Another 30 years and you'll have it under control. It's the best I can do. And I know you don't want to hear it, and I know it's easy for me to say, but I think I've never met, I go into rooms a lot with language educators, and they're very nice people. No room is filled more with the passions and affections than people in this room. So, you know, no good deed, no good feeling goes unpunished. So now, all that passion, since you lead in passion, you gotta step up, keep stepping up, okay? We can't do that together. And I think that's the end, and I would love to hear reactions from you. That's why I'm not talking anyway.
Ken's going to say a few words because Nick asked him to.
He asked me to respond.
Be nice.
His dream was wrong. I've never heard that before, said in such a way. I picked up so much from it. His dream was wrong, yes? I could listen to that 100 times and still not complain. Thank you. Just 2 minutes. We're both countries of immigration. We're both countries with community-based heritage language schools, which are a sector. We're both working in a system where languages are dying in mainstream schools, which makes us more important. I want to add one thing to his agenda. We need to get per capita funding for heritage language schools.
Yes.
Once you get the foot in the door, local, state, federal, anywhere, once you get their foot in the door, it might be $5 a kid, $10 for the year, 100 or 200. Once you can get funding, everything else will happen. Once the government takes responsibility, why? They get so much from you. Look at the resources in the teachers here. They don't have to have your training. You bring it from overseas. Look at what they get from the kids. Such language development that doesn't happen elsewhere. And the third thing that Dick brought up, equity. Equity. We have schools. What about communities? Do you know the largest community with hardly any schools? Filipino, Tagalog. You look at Southeast Asian, Lao, Khmer. You look at Pacific Islands, Samoan, Tongan. You look at refugee groups, African. They don't have the funding or support. What's the support for them? Where's the equity in this? But even for schools here, you survive by the skin of your teeth. You know, you need the funding because you're such a resource and you're benefiting the community. We need to get the funding. How do we convince them? Well, number one, equity. Number two, it's what they're getting for nothing from you. And what will happen? Well, once they take responsibility, they have to collect the data because they want to know the money's being spent. We know so much about immigration, but we don't even know what schools exist and who the kids are. Secondly, look at other things. Free use of public schools. In Australia, 80–90% of the community of heritage language schools get free rooms. Professional learning. Crediting the kids' learning because it's wonderful local initiatives with the SEALs, with whatever else is happening. But once the government spends a cent on your students, they will want proof that it's working. So in some ways, having government take responsibility for what they should be doing is what we want. So I just wanted to add that.
Well,
For now, I think it's open up. He's on the spot now.
there were no questions today.
I have a comment there. I actually don't think I have any questions, but I know you all do.
I just want to say that your talk is so important. There are people, as you know, many people in this country who are in fear, huge fear of immigrants. I mean, I have friends who talk about it. Very, very afraid. And this talk, I mean, you need to take it, out, out to the world.
Every time you look at one of our political debates, you understand very well what the threat of not acknowledging that we are a multilingual, heritage, immigrant-based society, have always been, and you can't deny it now.
Right, it's true. And then also OELA, the Office of English Language Acquisition, they have stopped using the term English language learners, and they're talking about multilinguals now. And they have a new initiative, Raise the Bar, which is developing a multilingual society. And we in the coalition got to do a webinar with them because they wanted to recognize what the community-based schools are doing. It's on their website, the webinar. Also, David Bong from Avant Assessment is here. David, I tried to introduce you yesterday. Stand up, please. So if you want to talk about assessments of English language proficiency, David is here. Plenty of opportunities. And finally, I want to say that we have two new Filipino language representatives who are very enthusiastic. Are you all online? I thought they were going to be at the conference, but anyway, we have two new Filipino language representatives, and they'll be working with the school. I'll be quiet now. Oh, Jairus is online? Oh, okay, great. He's with us. Yeah.
So now it's time for questions and objections.
Hi, Dr. Brock, thank you for your very inspirational plenary. I have a question that I don't want to say battling with, however, it makes me a bit frustrated. So how are we, as community-based heritage language schools and teachers, going to help our mainstream English school, I'm going to use that term because I'm from Canada, convince them to invest their curricular time, their educational time when they have to go back to university to upgrade, to engage community-based heritage language schools, courses that could help them either upgrade their own heritage language skills, because as some of you know, I'm from Canada, I run an Italian language school in our city. Before I got there, there were probably 15 schools that taught Italian, now there are 3. And in working with them, and I am going to use myself as the example, working with the teachers in the school that we rent space from is sometimes feeling like we are the unwanted stepchild. Because we are looked upon as I don't want to use the word fluff, but oh, that's so nice that they're learning their heritage language. That's a really nice thing for them, so then they can go to Italy. They forget that we are teaching subject content. We're teaching them to read, even though it's in Italian, reading is reading. You have to learn your phonics. When we do learning numbers, math is math. The only thing that changes is the language it's done in. And that's the part that I struggle with, is mainstream teachers that maybe have some best intentions, others that are like, yeah, that's nice, they go to Saturday school, that's all good, but what does that have to do with me? And I don't want to take the time to engage that because it's not in my job description. Sorry.
Not at all. the notion of gaining respect is a real big deal. Once we get respect, we can handle the rest of it. I have colleagues in the university now who recruit in mathematics. They recruit all the mathematics students who are heritage learners, and they say, go take the language and do one language 101 and get an A. And so you will get a better math GPA. That's how they treat heritage community learners in some institutions. There is hope in the horizon. And the greatest obstacle we have about respect is they don't think our learners speak well enough. They mixed English, their grammar, they avoid a few gender markers, and everything is masculine gender and so on. But what's happening, if you'll notice in the literature, this notion of translanguaging, that all of a sudden now, it has dawned on linguists, and by the way, for our whole language assessment system, there is no such thing as an educated native speaker who speaks one pure language. Doesn't ever happen. And the notion that now, for the first time, we're understanding when you're communicating, almost everybody, everyone in this room does translanguaging. You slip English in here and there when it's appropriate, you stay in one language or the other, or you use dialect, or you do another thing. You don't speak advanced level, pure 5-level native speakers, because we don't even know what they are. Because if we ever studied them carefully enough, we would find out there is no such thing, okay? And so I think that trend has to do with respect. I think we're seeing for the first time that the language that we're teaching, it's better that they communicate and they get a message across. However, we'll work on grammar. If we can keep them long enough, grammar comes in 2 plus 3, where you can start now saying, let's work a little bit now on this. So you want to sound good in this audience. I don't care about when you're talking about your friends, enjoy. But when you go to school and you're looking for a job, let's get the endings right. And you can do that after you hook them on the language and culture. Right.
I'm attending a school in the area that we are very small, very minority. We've always running the matter is, how does school grow in the pyramid? It's like, where a lot of young kids would come in and join our school, but once the curriculum get harder, and they just leave the school. And then the second matter is, actually, we have hard time finding teachers because, most of our, demographic right now, they're like 2nd, 3rd, 4th generation. So finding teachers and getting good curriculum is such a struggle for us. So I mean, I always wish that is there like any program from the university where they can support the student to go into community school to help teaching, where they can get like credit or something that actually would help us as a community to run, sustainable teacher. Like it is an issue for us going forward too, so.
A couple of issues there. You're exactly right. When you were speaking, I worked with the language immersion folks. That's exactly what dual language immersion people say. We got them through the 6th grade, and we lose them in 6th grade because now the disciplines are harder. We can't find teachers. They have to now be bilingual and know math. In elementary school, you can learn enough to teach. All you gotta do is get them to love learning. By the time you reach those levels, they have to know the subject. And so all of a sudden we're losing them, okay? And they have the same problem because we don't have the teacher and they're not motivated. So here's an opportunity where a very well-funded dual language immersion program, it's well-funded in this country, relatively speaking to heritage, and that collaboration may be useful because what you're saying is what we are always going to live with. Okay, we're never going to get rid of that. And so that's where this notion of it's okay when a 12-year-old says, I'm out of here. It would be better if we talked, if they were learning about, social media and so on. It interested them, okay? But it's okay to lose them as long as they've had this great experience and they'll be back with their children, okay? But I don't know the answer to that. There's no easy answer because it's part of the system. All we can do is hope that if we get more numbers in, that we're gonna start attracting, we're gonna get more attention to how to fix it. Dual language immersion is working. What they do is taper the immersion. And so what we would do is not have every Sunday morning or every Saturday afternoon taken up, maybe once a month, maybe just a summer camp. It would be different ways to approach them, right? Not just drill and kill with just come in and mom says, you go, and he says, on my, never mind. So I can't answer it, except there are models.
You said there's a lot of funding. How can we get funding? Because we've been running this for more than 10 years under our own funding. Like we all work as a volunteers and just based on tuition.
Can you just repeat the question?
Yeah, how do we get funding? This is all well and good, but if you don't have the money to do it. And here's where JNCL Nicholas comes in, because they're going to the Hill now, working very strongly now. We have, by the way, we have not a coalition, what do you call it, on the Hill, a group, caucus, the Americas Languages Caucus. They took that name from the study that the Academy did, and they took that name from some previous work. And the fact is now, that is a caucus on the Hill, America's Languages. Now that caucus has to forget about it's all K-16, and now it's heritage. And JNCL understands that and is working on it. Is money gonna flow? You know, I don't know whether you noticed or not, but we're in an election. Have you noticed that there's an election going on? And we know exactly what the next administration is going to be. We know exactly what their funding priority. Language for the next few years is going to drop even lower. Because they're going to be, everyone's going to come with new agendas. No matter who's elected, it's going to be a new agenda. And how we hold our own, I don't know, but I think that's why we have to really support JNCL, ACFL's work on the Hill. American Councils for International Education also works on the Hill. We're all working the Hill. That's the only place where we think we can make a big picture. But a big picture. But let me say, if you go to Utah and look at the Utah model, there's an easier way to do this. And the head of JNCL comes from New Jersey, and the same thing. It's a lot easier to get one state senator. All you need is one state senator who sits on one committee that says 2 million for heritage. When the final negotiation, it happens, but it can happen at the federal level. There's so much competition. At the state level, it works. And so I urge you, because there is one state senator in your Senate who is multilingual, who has children, if you want, or at least a heritage tradition. Get that person, and that person can just throw stuff on the table in the final negotiation, and that's what I would.
I thank you so much for your presentation, for your comments. I just want to emphasize how important it is for us to have data. So we have to publish what we are doing. So I'm an adjunct faculty. I work with associations, so we can partner together and we can get the IRBs and we can do the research, because you are already doing. What we are not having is the visibility with the data that Professor showed that is important for GET funding. So this is one thing that I want to emphasize. The other thing is we all have problems finding teachers. So I'm in Florida and we are having problem to find Portuguese teachers in Florida. So I have a partnership with the consulate, Brazilian consulate, and one cultural center. And what I did is like, it's a pilot program, we will be launched next month. But I did 3 little videos in Portuguese explaining what is to be a teacher in the US, what are community-based schools, what are dual language programs, everything in Portuguese. And the third video is step by step in Portuguese, how to be certificated. So because someone told yesterday, we have teachers in our community-based schools or our parents, they just don't know the path. They need to know, and the path is complicated. So we need to teach them step by step how to get there. So just ideas.
We have time for one more question, and there is one at the back.
Yeah, online, do we have questions online, by the way? Okay, please.
Thank you. I just want to add to that. So we have the same problem. There's no K through 12 Thai language programs. I work with community as high school. So I got some funding through the Thai consulate to create training modules, because I have pointed our parents to the Star Talk training module, but they got intimidated by the English. And some of them are not, they just have 6th grade education or what have you. And so they were intimidated by just the amount of English and terminology, even though it is accessible. So I'm working with the consulates, this is another idea, to create just online modules in the home language, in Thai, to teach them like what is backward design, right? What are language proficiency levels? Because we don't use that in Thailand yet. We're still kind of very like the teachers are masters, right? So what's just the basics of language learning, and hopefully it'll give them the confidence. When I did a survey of what they want out of the 30 schools that I spoke to, they just said, we want to teach, but we're so scared to teach, right? We didn't go to school for teaching, and I have to kind of give them this confidence, and hopefully it's too soon to tell. Maybe in a couple of years, I'll come back to the conference and be able to report how well it worked or how well it didn't, but that's another idea. We have Google Classroom, we have consulates, some of the embassies here that support what we do. Perhaps they can help in making volunteer teachers more confident and giving them the professional development they need to do what they need to do in our community-based schools.
Isn't it wonderful that we have a system that is so much broader? It goes with children and naive teachers and tiny steps for little feet, all the way up to real proficiency and so on. And this system so rich, culture-based and so on. You can't move away from the culture when you enter our classrooms and so on. It is incredible. If I were starting a language education system in the United States, that's what I would start it. And then let's move it into the formal classrooms. So we take all the good lessons that we have that are based on the real world and the real children and the motivation of parents. I have to end. I think my time is up. But I have one more statement. Yes.
Very quick. Just a quick question. Are we talking about the respect and reflecting on Antonella's question, respect from the public service? Are we on the actual agenda for the upcoming conference as a heritage language, community schools? And if we are not on their actual agenda, what we can do to be on their agenda as a community heritage language schools?
If I know Marty Abbott, if I know Apple, they would welcome us with open arms, but they can open their arms, but we have to jump in. Okay.
Yes, I can respond. Dick, I can respond to that.
I'm sure Joy can.
Someone at Apple has actually asked, no, what can I do?
You need the mic, you need the mic.
Yeah.
Especially because actual people are online.
They're online?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
I can Can you hear me?
Ask me, what can we do? Sorry, somebody wants to say something?
We definitely have heritage languages as a part of our organization and as a part of the convention. At the request of Joy and Anna, we actually changed our membership form so that you may sign up as a member of the Community Heritage School. We also have a special interest session. And so there are meetings with the special interest group for heritage languages. And there are also many, many sessions on appropriate instructional methodology for heritage learners. So we have quite a robust program for heritage, the heritage community at the convention.
Thank you, Marty. Thank you so much.
Well, I just wanna make sure you hear, she said, and I say, Marty, thank you very much. It was part, I would like to say this, it was part of the coalition's agenda when we realized that situation. We've been working on stuff like that for a couple of years. And it is unbelievable how open and willing both Celia Zamora, as Joy mentioned, and Marty Abbott, who just, said a few words. ACFO is really willing, but again, we are advocating against decades, centuries of not being seen and visibility, as Evian said. So we're getting there. Thank God for the Martys out there, and Dicks and Cans and, yeah.
I know our time is up, right? I have 2 more minutes. I know I have 2 more minutes. Yeah, we're going to cover you guys. It's a very personal thing. Never underestimate, never sell yourself short. I'm 84 years old. 5 years ago, my daughter came to me and said, Dad, I have an idea. It's called genie.com. It's a language interpretation company, but it's focused on the hard languages where there are no language learning models out there. It's focused on providing income to women in Afghanistan who are bilingual. And they earn money by sitting in their homes, and they have an opportunity to get income. Okay, and so this notion, and the reason I'm telling you this story, Jeannie, is because even at this age, an opportunity is waiting for each one of us. Don't sell yourself short. The world needs to be changed.
Thank you, everyone, for your great questions, for your great participation. We now have a 10-minute break.